The massive space station hung in the darkness above Proxima Centauri like a jewel made of metal and light. Inside its gleaming halls, representatives from 47 different alien species gathered in the grand assembly chamber. The air hummed, with tension and the soft whisper of translation devices working overtime to convert thousands of different languages into something each delegate could understand. Ambassador Hyunwoo Park sat alone at the human delegation table. His dark suit looked plain next to the colorful robes and elaborate ceremonial armor worn by the other species. He kept his hands folded on the polished surface before him, and his face showed no emotion as Chancellor Vextar rose to address the assembly. Vextar was tall even by his species standards. His blue-gray skin seemed to shimmer under the chamber's lights, and his 4 arms moved with practiced grace as he gestured to the gathered crowd. When he spoke, his voice carried easily through the vast room without any need for amplification. "Fellow members of the Galactic Council," Vextar began, "we gather today to address a threat to the peace and stability we have worked so hard to build." His large black eyes swept across the assembly before settling on Hyunwoo. "The human species has shown a disturbing pattern of behavior that can no longer be ignored." Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Some delegates nodded in agreement, while others shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Hyunwoo remained perfectly still. "First," Vextar continued, raising one of his 4 hands, "they have expanded their military presence far beyond what any reasonable species requires for defense. Human warships now patrol systems they have no legitimate claim to protect." A holographic display materialized above the central platform, showing star charts with red dots marking human ship positions. The pattern did look aggressive to those who didn't know the full story. "Second," another hand rose, "they refuse to share their advanced propulsion technology with the galactic community. This violates the spirit of cooperation that binds our civilization together." More nods from the assembly. The Korthani delegate, a being that looked like a walking tree made of crystal, clicked its agreement in a sound like wind chimes. "Third, and most seriously," Vextar's voice grew louder, "they have repeatedly interfered with primitive species in violation of our most sacred law. The non-interference doctrine exists to protect developing civilizations from corruption by advanced technology." The hologram changed to show footage of human ships landing on worlds where the local inhabitants had barely discovered fire. To the council members, it looked like clear evidence of human arrogance and lawlessness. Up in the observation gallery, Ji-Hai Kim watched the proceedings with growing anger. She was Earth's chief technology liaison and had worked for years to build relationships with these species. Now she watched decades of careful diplomacy crumble as Vextar painted humanity as galactic villains. "The evidence is clear," Vextar declared. "Humanity believes itself above our laws. They take what they want and do what they please without regard for the consequences. This cannot continue." He paused for dramatic effect, letting his words sink in before delivering his final blow. "Therefore, I propose immediate and comprehensive sanctions against Earth and all human colonies. No trade, no technology exchange, no diplomatic contact. Let them learn the value of galactic cooperation by experiencing life without it." The chamber erupted. Delegates from dozens of species rose to voice their support. The musical voices of the harmony singers blended into a chorus of agreement. Even species that had been friendly to humans seemed to nod along with the proposal. Hyunwoo finally stood. The chamber fell silent as all eyes turned to him. He was shorter than most of the other delegates, and his species looked fragile compared to the armored Korthani or the massive bulk of the Titan representatives. But something in his bearing commanded attention. "Chancellor Vextar," Hyunwoo said in a calm, clear voice, "you speak of evidence and law. May I present humanity's response to these charges?" "You may speak," Vextar replied with obvious reluctance. "Though I doubt words can excuse your species' actions." Hyunwoo smiled slightly. "We have always believed that actions speak louder than words. Earth accepts these sanctions." The simplicity of his response caught the assembly off guard. They had expected denials, arguments, maybe even threats. Instead, the human ambassador seemed almost relieved. "Furthermore," Hyunwoo continued, Effective immediately, all human personnel will be withdrawn from joint operations and shared facilities throughout the galaxy. We will respect the Council's decision completely. Vextar blinked in surprise. This wasn't how these things usually went. Sanctioned species typically fought back, argued their case, or tried to negotiate. They didn't. Just accept punishment and promise to cooperate. Very well, the Chancellor said after a moment. The vote will now be taken. The result was never in doubt. 46 species voted in favor of sanctions. Only humanity abstained. As the vote was announced, Hyunwoo gathered his materials and walked toward the exit. He paused at the chamber, doors, and turned back to address the assembly one final time. The Galactic Council has made its decision, he said. Earth will honor it completely. We withdraw all cooperation and assistance effective immediately. We wish you well in your future endeavors. Something in his tone made several delegates shift uneasily. It sounded less like a defeated nation accepting punishment and more like a warning. As Hyunwoo left the chamber, Ji-hee Kim was already sending coded messages from the observation gallery. Her fingers moved quickly over her communication device as she transmitted orders to human personnel across the galaxy. On a dozen different worlds, human technicians and engineers began shutting down equipment and packing their belongings. Space stations that had operated smoothly for decades suddenly found themselves short-staffed as human workers quietly departed. Research facilities lost key personnel overnight. Back on Earth, Dongmin Lee sat in a windowless room deep beneath the surface. Banks of monitors surrounded him, showing status reports from across the galaxy. As Ji-Hai's messages arrived, he began entering commands into his console. Initiate Protocol 7, he said to his assistant. So Young Choi. All stations are to cease operations and return to Earth immediately. So Young's fingers danced across her own keyboard. Acknowledged. Sending shutdown commands now. She paused and looked at her superior. Are you sure about this? Once we activate full withdrawal, there's no going back. Dongmin nodded grimly. The Council has made their choice. Now they'll live with the consequences. He opened a secure channel to Luna Base. This is Earth Command. Authorization code Alpha 77. Activate Project Blackout. ZEUS protocol is now in effect. The response came back immediately. ZEUS protocol confirmed. All Guardian stations switching to autonomous mode. Estimated time until noticeable effects. 36 hours. Across the galaxy, on worlds the Council had never heard of, and in star. Systems that appeared empty on every map, ancient machines began powering down. Stations that had operated in secret for decades went dark one by one. Equipment that had worked tirelessly to maintain the delicate balance of space itself fell silent. The aliens in their glittering council chamber had no idea what they had just done. They saw only a young species being put in its place. They believed. They were teaching humanity a lesson about respecting galactic law. They had no way of knowing that humanity had been the only thing standing between their civilizations and total collapse. For 40 years, human engineers and scientists had worked in secret to maintain systems that kept the galaxy itself stable. Now those systems were shutting down. Chancellor Vexatar returned to his private quarters feeling satisfied with the day's work. The humans had been properly humbled and the galaxy was safe from their reckless expansion. He had no way of knowing that in less than 2 days, his own homeworld would begin experiencing the first signs of technological failure. As the great space station continued its orbit above Proxima Centauri, the delegates prepared to return to their homeworlds with news of their victory over human arrogance. None of them noticed the slight vibration that had begun in the station's hull, or the tiny fluctuations in their quantum communication systems. The countdown to galactic chaos had begun, and the aliens who had started it were completely unaware of what was coming. 30 days had passed since the Galactic Council imposed sanctions on Earth, and the first signs of trouble were beginning to appear across the galaxy. On the mining world of Kethvar, Supervisor Zexthani noticed that his quantum excavators were producing strange readings. The massive machines that could tear through solid rock like it was paper were starting to stutter and slow down. "Run another diagnostic," he told his assistant, clicking his mandibles in frustration. The Vexkari had been mining this system for over 2 centuries, and their equipment had never failed like this before. Similar problems were cropping up throughout Vexkari space. Communication relays that connected their homeworld to distant colonies began experiencing random blackouts. Ships reported navigation systems glitching during routine flights between planets. Most concerning of all, the massive orbital defense platforms that protected their core worlds were showing power fluctuations that no engineer could explain. Chancellor Vextar stood in the control center of the primary defense station above his homeworld, watching technicians scramble to find solutions. "How long until we can restore full functionality?" he demanded. Chief Engineer Motkari shook his forearms in the Vexkari gesture of uncertainty. "We cannot determine the cause, Chancellor. Every system shows normal operation until the moment it fails. Then it simply stops working as if the basic laws of physics have changed." 3 systems away, the crystalline Shalari were facing their own crisis. Their entire civilization depended on quantum resonance networks that allowed their crystal-based minds to communicate instantly across vast distances. Elder Vel-Shinar tried to contact the outer colonies, but found only static where clear thoughts should have been. "The harmonic frequency is shifting," reported her chief technician, a younger crystal whose light pulsed with anxiety. "Our resonance chambers cannot maintain stable quantum locks. It is as if something is interfering with the fundamental structure of space itself." The problems were spreading. On the agricultural world of New Harmony, the Singers found that their biomechanical farming systems were producing crops with unstable genetic patterns. The delicate environmental controls that had transformed a barren planet into a garden paradise were slowly failing. Captain Tae-Hyun Kang received the distress signal while his ship was patrolling the neutral zone between human and alien space. The Earth vessel Indomitable had been performing routine border patrols when the emergency broadcast reached them on an ancient frequency that hadn't been used in decades. "Captain," his communications officer reported, "we're receiving a priority distress call from a Korthani freighter. They're reporting complete engine failure and life support malfunction." Tae-Hyun frowned. The Korthani had some of the most reliable technology in the galaxy. Their crystal-based power systems were supposed to be nearly indestructible. "Set course to intercept. Maximum speed." When the Indomitable reached the stranded freighter, what they found defied explanation. The massive, crystalline ship was dead in space, its usual soft glow completely extinguished. The crew was still alive, but their emergency life support would only last a few more hours. "This doesn't make sense," Tae-Hyun told his second-in-command, Mi-Jin Huang, as they watched the rescue operation. "Korthani ships don't just stop working. Their power crystals are grown specifically to last for thousands of years." Mi-Jin studied the sensor readings from the alien vessel. "According to our scans, their crystals are intact, but they're not producing any energy. It's like someone turned off the fundamental forces that make them work." After rescuing the Korthani crew, Tae-Hyun filed his report with Earth Command. Within hours, similar reports were flooding in from human ships throughout the galaxy. Alien vessels were suffering catastrophic failures with increasing frequency. Species that had dominated space travel for millennia were finding themselves stranded and helpless. On Earth, Junsik Nam studied the incoming reports in his laboratory, deep beneath Seoul. As head of humanity's Xenological Studies Division, he had spent decades learning how alien technology worked. The pattern he was seeing in the failure reports triggered a memory from his early research. "Director," he called to his assistant, "pull up the classified files on Project Understanding. I need to review the Korthani crystal analysis from 20 years ago." The files painted a disturbing picture. Every major alien technology, despite appearing completely different on the surface, shared one critical component. They all relied on artificially stabilized quantum fields to function. The Vexkari mining equipment used quantum tunneling to break apart molecular bonds. The Shalari communication networks required quantum entanglement to transmit thoughts instantly across space. Even the Korthani power crystals needed quantum field manipulation to transform raw energy into usable power. More troubling was what human scientists had discovered about these quantum fields. They weren't naturally stable. Without constant maintenance and adjustment, they would collapse within weeks. The alien civilizations had built their entire technological base on something that required continuous support to keep working. Junsik called an emergency meeting with the Earth Defense Council. As he presented his findings to the assembled leaders, he watched their faces change from confusion to understanding to horror. "You're saying all alien technology depends on artificially maintained quantum stability?" asked Council Leader Yun-Hae Song, a former advocate for closer cooperation with alien species. "Not just their technology," Jun-Sik replied grimly. "Their biology, too. The Shalari crystals need quantum fields to maintain their consciousness. The Vexkari nervous systems have evolved to depend on quantum-enhanced neural transmission. Remove the field stability, and they don't just lose their machines, they lose themselves." Yun-Hae felt sick as the implications became clear. "And Earth has been maintaining these fields?" "For 43 years, Jun-Sik confirmed. "Ever since we discovered that the galactic quantum substrate was naturally decaying. We've had teams working in secret across the galaxy to keep their civilizations from collapsing." The room fell silent as the council members absorbed this information. Finally, someone asked the question they were all thinking. "What happens now that we've withdrawn our support?" Before Jun-Sik could answer, an aide burst into the room. "Council Leader Song, we're receiving an emergency transmission from the Galactic Council. Chancellor Vexatar is requesting immediate assistance. They're reporting system failures across multiple species and want to know if Earth is experiencing similar problems." Yun-Hae looked around the room at her fellow council members. The irony was almost too much to bear. The same aliens who had sanctioned Earth for its supposed arrogance were now begging for help, not knowing that their punishment had removed the very protection that kept them alive. "Prepare a response," she said finally. "Tell them that Earth is operating normally, and that we hope they can resolve their technical difficulties soon." Meanwhile, in the depths of space, the hidden stations that had maintained galactic stability for decades continued their shutdown sequence. Station Commander Bae-ho Kim watched as his team completed the final shutdown of Guardian Post 7, a facility built inside a hollowed-out asteroid in the Vega system. "All quantum stabilizers are offline," reported his chief engineer, Young-hee Park. "Local field strength will begin degrading within 6 hours." Bae-ho nodded and activated the final sequence. Around them, massive machines that had hummed with energy for decades fell silent. The station that had secretly protected 3 alien star systems from quantum decay was now just another piece of dead rock floating in space. "Evacuation complete," came the report from the docking bay. "All personnel are aboard the transport." As their ship pulled away from the station, Bae-ho took one last look at the facility that had been his home for 5 years. In a few days, the Rillan colony ships in this system would start experiencing engine failures. Their beautiful floating cities would fall from their gas giant's atmosphere as their anti-gravity system stopped working, and they would never know why. Back in the Galactic Council chambers, emergency sessions were being called as reports of failures continued to mount. Species that had never experienced technological breakdown in their recorded history were watching their civilizations crumble. The Harmony Singer's bioships, living vessels grown rather than built, were beginning to sicken and die. The Titan Federation's massive mobile cities were grinding to a halt as their fusion reactors became unstable. Even the Council's own space station was experiencing minor system glitches that grew worse each day. Chancellor Vextar stood before the emergency assembly, his usual confidence replaced by barely controlled panic. "The pattern is clear," he announced. "These failures are not random. Something is causing quantum instability across the galaxy." "Could this be a human attack?" asked the Korthani representative, her crystal body flickering with agitation. "Impossible," Vextar replied. "Humans lack the technology for such widespread sabotage. Besides, they accepted our sanctions peacefully. They showed no signs of hostility. What none of them realized was that humanity had never needed to attack. They had simply stopped protecting their enemies from the hostile universe around them." The transport that carried Chancellor Vexatar and his desperate delegation descended through Earth's atmosphere toward the coordinates they had been given. What they saw below defied their understanding of human civilization. Instead of the primitive settlements they expected, massive structures emerged from the Himalayan peaks like metal flowers blooming from stone. Woo-Jin Park waited at the landing platform as the alien shuttle touched down. He was Hyun-Woo's older brother and had spent the last 15 years as director of humanity's most classified project. His weathered face showed no emotion as Chancellor Vextar stumbled down the ramp, his usual arrogance replaced by obvious desperation. "Director Park," Vextar said in a voice that trembled slightly. "Thank you for agreeing to meet with us. The galaxy faces a crisis beyond anything in recorded history." Wu Jin nodded politely. "Please follow me, Chancellor. There are things you need to see." The alien delegation followed him into an elevator that descended far deeper than should have been possible. The walls were lined with displays showing data streams that made their translation devices struggle to keep up. Numbers and graphs flowed past in languages some of the aliens had never seen before. "How deep does this facility go?" asked the Shalari representative, her crystalline form pulsing with nervous energy. "Deep enough," Wu Jin replied simply. When the elevator finally stopped, the doors opened onto a vast underground chamber that seemed to stretch beyond the horizon. The ceiling disappeared into darkness above, while the floor extended in all directions, filled with machinery that hummed with barely contained power. Young Soo Kim stepped forward to greet the delegation. As Chief Technical Officer for the ZEUS project, he had been looking forward to this moment for years. "Welcome to the heart of galactic civilization," he said with a slight smile. "I don't understand," Vextar said, staring at the impossible scope of the facility. "This is clearly advanced technology, but humans are supposed to be a young species. How could you have built something like this?" Young Su led them to a central platform where a massive holographic display materialized above their heads. The image showed the galaxy in 3 dimensions, with thousands of tiny lights scattered throughout the spiral arms. "Each light represents a ZEUS station," Young Su explained. "For the past 43 years, humanity has maintained a network of quantum stabilization facilities throughout known space. We call it the Zeroth Energy Universal Stabilization System." Haewon Lee joined them on the platform, carrying a data tablet that contained decades of carefully guarded secrets. "Your species discovered space travel by learning to manipulate quantum fields," she said to the assembled aliens. "What you never realized is that those fields are naturally unstable in this galaxy." The hologram changed to show wave patterns flowing across space like ocean currents. In some regions, the waves were smooth and regular. In others, they churned with chaotic turbulence that would destroy any technology dependent on quantum stability. "The galaxy's quantum substrate has been decaying for millions of years," Haewon continued. "Natural cosmic forces create distortions that make advanced technology impossible in most regions. Without intervention, any civilization that develops quantum-based technology will face collapse within a century." Boram Choi activated another section of the display, showing detailed readouts from across the galaxy. "When humanity first achieved interstellar flight, we discovered that our home system was located in one of the few naturally stable quantum zones. This allowed us to develop technology that other species thought was impossible." The aliens stared at the data in growing horror. The Vexkari delegation leader, a military officer named Kex Moran, stepped forward with his hand resting on his weapon. "Are you claiming that humans are naturally superior to other species?" "Not superior," Wu Jin said calmly. "Lucky. Earth's location gave us advantages, but it also gave us responsibilities. When we encountered other civilizations, we realized they were all living on borrowed time." Young Su manipulated the display to show historical data from the past 4 decades. "The first alien species we encountered were the Rillan. Beautiful, peaceful, advanced in many ways. They had developed wonderful biotechnology and art that took our breath away. They were also 18 months away from complete technological collapse." "Impossible," Vextar protested. "The Rillan civilization has existed for over 3,000 years. "Because we saved them," Boram replied. "We built the first ZEUS station in their system and stabilized their local quantum environment. They never knew why their technology suddenly became more reliable, or why their bioships stopped dying of mysterious failures." The display shifted to show more species and more stations. Each one told the same story: a civilization on the brink of collapse, rescued by human intervention they never knew existed. "We could have revealed ourselves," Haewon said quietly. "Could have demanded recognition, tribute, worship even. Instead, we chose to work in secret. We believed that civilizations should be judged by their achievements, not their dependence on others. Vextar's legs gave out, and he sank into the chair that young Su quickly provided. The chancellor of the most powerful military force in the galaxy was learning that his entire civilization existed only because humans allowed it to exist. The quantum stabilizers require constant maintenance, Wu Jin explained. We've had teams of engineers and scientists working throughout the galaxy for decades. They lived in hidden facilities, used false identities, sacrificed normal lives to keep your civilizations running. But you withdrew them, whispered the Korthani representative, her crystal body flickering with barely controlled fear. You sanctioned us, Young Su replied with a shrug. You cut off all contact and cooperation. You made it clear that humanity was not welcome in galactic civilization. So we left. Boram activated a new section of the display showing current system status across the galaxy. Red indicators marked failing zones, while green showed areas still under protection. The red was spreading like a disease. Without maintenance, quantum stability breaks down quickly, she explained. The process accelerates as more systems fail. Within 6 months, every major alien civilization will be reduced to pre-industrial technology levels. Within 2 years, the quantum cascade will reach even naturally stable regions. The silence stretched as the aliens absorbed the magnitude of what they were seeing. Finally, Vextar found his voice. What do you want? He asked in a broken whisper. Wu Jin looked at each member of the delegation in turn. That depends on what you're offering. Anything, the Shalari representative said immediately. Territory, resources, tribute, we can give you entire star systems. We don't need territory, Young Su said. Earth has everything we require. Technology, then, Vextar suggested desperately. We can share our most advanced research. Heiwan laughed, but there was no humor in it. Chancellor, we've been maintaining your technology for 4 decades. We understand it better than you do. What about our military forces? Kex Moran offered. The Vexkari fleet could serve under human command. To fight whom? Boram asked. The only threat to galactic civilization is quantum decay, and that's not something you can shoot. The aliens looked at each other with growing panic. They had come expecting to negotiate with a desperate species that needed their help. Instead, they found themselves begging for mercy from the beings who had secretly controlled their fate for decades. There must be something, Vextar pleaded. Some way to restore the stabilization network. Wu Jin was quiet for a long moment, appearing to consider the request. Finally, he spoke. There is a way, he said slowly, but it would require a fundamental change in how galactic civilization operates. What kind of change? Vextar asked immediately. The kind that recognizes reality instead of comfortable lies, Young Su replied. For 40 years, we've protected you while you believed yourselves superior to humanity. We've watched you dismiss us as primitive while depending on our technology for survival. That dynamic cannot continue. Heiwan stepped forward. If we restore the ZEUS network, it will be under new terms. Terms that acknowledge what we've learned about the relationship between protector and protected. We accept, Vextar said without hesitation. You don't even know what we're proposing, Boram pointed out. It doesn't matter, the Chancellor replied. Our civilizations are dying. Whatever you want, whatever the cost, we'll pay it. Wu Jin nodded slowly. This was exactly what they had expected to hear. The proud aliens who had sanctioned humanity for arrogance were now willing to accept any terms to survive. Very well, he said. But understand this. Once we restart the network, there will be no going back to the old ways. The galaxy will operate under new rules. What rules? The Korthani representative asked, nervously. Young Su smiled for the first time since the delegation had arrived. Rules that reflect the truth about who really keeps civilization running. As the aliens were led deeper into the facility to see the full scope of humanity's hidden infrastructure, none of them noticed the small detail that would define their future. Every door they passed, every control panel they saw, every piece of equipment in the vast complex bore the same simple marking, a stylized Earth with the words Terran Protectorate written beneath it. The emergency session of the Galactic Council looked nothing like the grand assembly that had sanctioned Earth just weeks before. Half the delegates attended via unstable holographic projections as their ship's communication systems failed. Others had been unable to travel at all as their vessels suffered critical malfunctions. The once mighty chamber now felt more like a refugee camp than the seat of galactic power. Ambassador Hyunwoo Park entered the chamber to find Chancellor Vexatar waiting for him with obvious desperation. The proud alien leader who had orchestrated Earth's punishment now looked broken, his forearms trembling as he gestured for Hyunwoo to take his seat. "Ambassador Park," Vexatar began, his voice lacking its former authority, "I want to thank you for agreeing to attend this emergency session. The situation has become difficult." Hyunwoo settled into his chair with the calm confidence of someone who held all the cards. "I understand you're experiencing some technical problems, Chancellor. Earth hopes you'll be able to resolve them soon." The response sent a ripple of unease through the assembled delegates. There was something in the human's tone that suggested he knew more about their problems than he was letting on. Jin Ayun stepped forward to join Hyunwoo at the human delegation table. As Earth's new chief negotiator, she had been chosen specifically for this moment. Her background in both diplomacy and quantum physics made her uniquely qualified to explain humanity's position. "The technical problems you mention," Jinna said, addressing the full assembly, "appear to be related to quantum field instability. Perhaps you could describe them in more detail?" The Shalari representative, her crystalline form flickering weakly, spoke first. "Our communication networks have failed completely. Colonies that have been in constant contact for centuries are now isolated. Our biocrystals are dying and we don't know why. The Korthani nation faces similar difficulties," added their delegate, her usual radiant glow barely visible. "Our power crystals have stopped producing energy. Ships are stranded throughout our territory, and our orbital cities are falling toward their planets." One by one, species that had once dominated star systems described the collapse of their civilizations. The Vexkari reported mining operations shutting down as their quantum excavators failed. The Harmony Singers told of bioships withering like flowers without water. Even the mighty Titan Federation, whose mobile cities had ruled space lanes for millennia, admitted that their fusion reactors were becoming dangerously unstable. Kyung-min, Oh, representing Earth's military forces, listened to each report with professional interest. As a career officer who had spent decades working with alien technology, he understood better than most what was happening to these civilizations. "These quantum field disturbances," he said when the reports were finished, "they seem to be affecting every species except humanity." "That's curious, don't you think?" Vexatar leaned forward desperately. "Ambassador Park, if Earth has found a way to protect itself from this phenomenon, we beg you to share that knowledge. Billions of lives hang in the balance." Hyunwoo exchanged glances with his team before responding. "Earth has indeed developed certain technologies that provide protection from quantum instability. However, given the current state of our diplomatic relations, I'm not sure how we could assist you." "The sanctions," Vexatar said immediately. "We're prepared to lift them completely. Full restoration of trade and diplomatic ties." "That's generous," Jinna replied, "but insufficient. You see, the sanctions weren't just an inconvenience for Earth. They were an insult to a species that has sacrificed greatly for galactic stability." The aliens looked confused. What sacrifices could a young species like humanity have made for galactic civilization? Du Yon-jung, a reformed member of the Shalari Collective, who now spoke for multiple smaller species, rose to address the humans. "What sacrifices do you speak of? Humanity has been part of galactic civilization for less than a century." Kyung-min smiled grimly. "Actually, we've been protecting galactic civilization for over 4 decades. You just never knew it." The assembled delegates stirred uneasily. Something in the human's tone suggested revelations they weren't prepared to hear. Jinna activated a portable holographic projector that displayed a 3-dimensional map of the galaxy. Thousands of small lights dotted the star systems, each one pulsing with gentle energy. "These represent ZEUS stations," she explained. "Quantum stabilization facilities that have been preventing the collapse of advanced technology throughout known space. Every single one has been built, maintained, and operated by human personnel." The chamber fell silent as the implications became clear. The Korthani delegate was the first to speak. That's impossible. We would have detected such facilities in our territory. Would you? Kyungmin asked. Your sensor technology depends on quantum resonance patterns that we've been carefully managing for decades. We could hide entire fleets in your systems and you'd never notice. Vextar's face went pale as he studied the holographic display. You're saying that humanity has been secretly operating throughout our space for 40 years? Operating, maintaining, protecting, Hyunwoo confirmed. Your civilizations exist because we allow them to exist. The moment we withdrew our protection, your technology began failing. The revelation hit the assembled delegates like a physical blow. Species that had considered humans primitive newcomers were learning that their entire way of life depended on human charity. Why? Do-yeon asked in a whisper. Why protect us in secret? Why not reveal yourselves and demand recognition? Jinna's expression softened slightly. Because we believed that civilizations should be judged by their achievements, not their dependencies. We hoped that eventually, you would develop the wisdom to maintain galactic stability without our intervention. But you failed that test, Kyungmin added bluntly. Instead of seeking cooperation and understanding, you chose to punish us for imagined crimes. You sanctioned the very species that kept you alive. Sung-Ho Park, Earth's president, entered the chamber at that moment, accompanied by a small security detail. His presence commanded immediate attention from every delegate. Unlike previous human leaders who had appeared before the council as supplicants, Seung-Ho carried himself with the authority of someone who understood his true position in galactic affairs. Chancellor Vexitar, Sung-Ho said as he approached the central platform, I understand you're experiencing some technical difficulties. President Park, Vexitar replied, rising to his feet with obvious effort. We've learned some disturbing information about humanity's role in galactic affairs. If what your representatives tell us is true, then we owe your species an enormous debt. Yes, you do, Sung-Ho agreed without hesitation. The question is what you're prepared to do about it. The blunt response sent another wave of unease through the chamber. This wasn't how diplomatic negotiations usually proceeded. Normally, there would be careful dancing around issues, subtle implications, face-saving compromises. Instead, the humans were stating facts with uncomfortable directness. We're prepared to offer full compensation, Vexitar said quickly. Technology transfers, territorial concessions, resource agreements, whatever Earth requires. What we require, Sung-Ho replied, is a fundamental restructuring of galactic civilization. The old system where humanity worked in secret while alien species believed themselves superior is finished. If we restore the ZEUS network, it will be under new terms. What terms? Do-yeon asked nervously. Jinna reactivated the holographic display, this time showing proposed political boundaries throughout the galaxy. The Terran Protectorate will assume responsibility for maintaining galactic stability. All major alien civilizations will acknowledge Earth's role as the guardian of advanced technology. A protectorate? The Korthani delegate asked. You want us to become human subjects? Not subjects, Kyungmin corrected. Protected species. There's a difference. You'll maintain your governments, your cultures, your territories, but you'll acknowledge the reality of who keeps your civilizations running. Vexitar studied the proposed arrangements with growing alarm. This would make humanity the dominant power in the galaxy. Humanity already is the dominant power, Seung-Ho pointed out. We're simply making it official. And if we refuse? Do-yeon asked. The humans exchanged glances before Hyunwoo answered. Then your civilizations continue to collapse. Within 6 months, every major alien species will be reduced to pre-industrial technology levels. Within 2 years, the quantum cascade will spread even to naturally stable regions. You're holding the galaxy hostage, Vexitar accused. No, Jinna replied calmly. We're offering to save it. The hostage situation was created by cosmic forces beyond anyone's control. We're simply the only species with the technology to provide protection. The chamber erupted as delegates argued among themselves in dozens of languages. Some called for acceptance of human terms, while others demanded alternative solutions. The cacophony of voices grew louder until Sung-Ho raised his hand for silence. You have 24 hours to decide, he announced. Accept the Terran Protectorate, and we'll begin restoring ZEUS stations immediately. Refuse, and we'll withdraw completely to our naturally stable systems and wait for the galaxy to reset itself. As the human delegation prepared to leave, 6 months after the Terra Accords were signed, the galaxy had transformed beyond recognition. Commander Hyojin Lee stood on the bridge of the new flagship Protector as it completed its patrol of the former Vexkari territory. The massive vessel represented everything that had changed about galactic civilization. It was built using human technology but crewed by beings from across the galaxy who now served under Earth's command. "Status report," Hyojin requested as she settled into the captain's chair. "All ZEUS stations in this sector are operating at full capacity," reported her second officer, a Korthani engineer named Velthara, whose crystal body glowed with healthy energy. "Quantum stability is holding steady across all monitored systems." "Excellent. What about the tribute shipments?" "The Vexkari Mining Consortium has delivered this month's quantum crystals ahead of schedule," answered her communications officer, a reformed Shalari who had chosen to work directly with humanity rather than remain with her collective. "They seem eager to demonstrate their cooperation with the Protectorate." Hyojin nodded with satisfaction. The same mining operations that had once supplied the Vexkari military machine now provided resources for maintaining the ZEUS network. It was a fitting irony that the species who had led the sanctions against Earth now worked harder than anyone to support human operations. On Earth, Sumin Kim managed the complex web of agreements and obligations that held the new galactic order together. As Earth's first galactic administrator, she oversaw tribute collection, resource allocation, and conflict resolution for dozens of alien civilizations. Her office in Geneva had become the unofficial capital of known space. "The Harmony Singers are requesting permission to establish a new colony in the Rigel system," her assistant informed her as she reviewed the day's agenda. "Approved, with standard conditions," Sumin replied, without looking up from her reports. "ZEUS station construction must be completed before colonist arrival, and the Singers will provide bioship support for our exploration fleet." The standard conditions were non-negotiable. Every new colony, every expansion of alien civilization, required human approval and support. The ZEUS stations that made advanced technology possible were built and maintained exclusively by Earth, making humanity the ultimate arbiter of galactic development. "There's also a request from the former Chancellor Vextar," her assistant continued. "He's asking for an audience to discuss improving his species' standing in the Protectorate." Sumin smiled slightly. The proud leader, who had once orchestrated Earth's punishment, now spent his days trying to curry favor with human administrators. "Schedule him for next week. Make sure he understands this is a courtesy, not a right." The change in Vextar's circumstances reflected a broader transformation throughout the galaxy. Species that had once considered themselves equals or superiors to humanity now competed desperately for human approval. The beings who had voted for sanctions were now the most eager to demonstrate their loyalty to the Terran Protectorate. In the ZEUS Control Center beneath the Himalayas, Sang-Woo Choi monitored quantum stability across 10,000 star systems. The work was exactly the same as it had been for decades, but the context had changed completely. Where once human technicians had worked in secret, hiding their vital contributions from ungrateful alien civilizations, they now operated openly, with the full knowledge and gratitude of those they protected. "Sector 7 is showing minor fluctuations," reported his lead technician, Young Mi Han. "Should I dispatch a maintenance team?" "Yes, but use the new mixed crew protocols," Sang-Woo replied. "Send humans for the technical work, but include alien personnel for support duties. Let them learn how their survival depends on our expertise." The mixed crew protocols were part of a deliberate policy to educate alien species about their dependence on human technology. Representatives from major civilizations were invited to observe ZEUS operations, not as partners but as students learning to appreciate the complexity of their protection. Jaewon Bae, Earth's chief historian, spent his days documenting the transformation for future generations. His archives contained detailed records of how quickly the galaxy had adapted to new realities once survival was at stake. "The most interesting aspect," he noted in his latest report, "is how readily the aliens have accepted their new status. Species that fought wars for centuries over minor territorial disputes submitted to human authority within weeks when faced with technological collapse. The speed of the transformation had surprised even human leaders. They had expected resistance, negotiation, perhaps even attempted rebellion. Instead, alien civilizations had embraced the Protectorate with enthusiasm that bordered on desperation. Chancellor Vextar embodied this transformation. Once the most powerful military leader in the galaxy, he now served as Earth's liaison to his own people. His office on the Vexkari homeworld displayed the Terran Protectorate flag more prominently than his own species' banner. "The morning briefing is ready, Chancellor," his aide informed him as he prepared for another day of managing his species' submission to human authority. "Thank you," Vextar replied, straightening his ceremonial sash that now bore human symbols, alongside traditional Vexkari designs. "Any word from Earth Command about our request for additional ZEUS coverage in the outer colonies?" Administrator Kim's office says they're considering it, but they want to see improved cooperation from our mining guilds first. Vextar nodded wearily. Every aspect of Vexkari life now required human approval. Their ships flew on routes approved by Earth. Their colonies expanded only with human permission. Their technology functioned only because humanity allowed it to function. The irony wasn't lost on him. He had sanctioned Earth to teach humans about respecting galactic law. Instead, he had learned that humans were the galactic law. On Luna Base, Doha Kim coordinated the training programs that prepared new human personnel for positions throughout the galaxy. The demand for qualified technicians, administrators, and supervisors had exploded as the Protectorate expanded its operations. "We have 300 new graduates ready for assignment," she reported to Earth Command. "The Korthani sectors are requesting additional technical support, and the Shalari Collective wants human advisors for their communication network upgrades." "Approved for both requests," came the reply. "Make sure the new personnel understand their authority. They're not consultants or partners. They're representatives of Earth's power." The distinction was crucial. Humans assigned to alien territories didn't serve as equals working alongside local populations. They were governors and administrators managing subject species. The relationship was clear and unambiguous. Humanity ruled, aliens obeyed. This new dynamic had produced unexpected benefits for both sides. Alien civilizations, freed from the constant threat of technological collapse, experienced unprecedented stability and growth. Human protection allowed them to pursue arts, philosophy, and exploration without worrying about survival. Meanwhile, humanity gained access to resources and knowledge from across the galaxy while maintaining absolute control over the infrastructure that made it all possible. Dr. Min Jun, Earth's leading xenobiologist, documented these changes in his research stations throughout alien space. "The psychological adaptation has been remarkable," he noted. "Species that once prided themselves on independence now derive security from their dependence on human protection." The observation highlighted a fundamental shift in galactic psychology. Where once alien species had competed for dominance and status, they now competed for human favor and approval. The measure of a civilization's success was no longer its military might or territorial extent, but its standing within the Terran Protectorate. Young aliens grew up learning human languages alongside their own. Alien universities offered courses in human culture and history. Artists throughout the galaxy created works celebrating Earth's role as galactic protector. The transformation was so complete that many younger aliens couldn't imagine a galaxy without human leadership. As Hyojin Lee completed her patrol and returned to base, she reflected on how much had changed since the sanctions were first imposed. The aliens who had tried to humble humanity had instead revealed humanity's true power. The species that had believed themselves superior now served their former targets with grateful loyalty. "Commander," her navigation officer reported, "we're receiving a priority transmission from Earth Command. The President wants all senior staff to return for the first anniversary celebration of the Terra Accords." "Set course for Earth," Hyojin ordered. "Maximum speed." As the Protector jumped to hyperspace, powered by technology that only humans truly understood, Hyojin smiled at the thought of the coming celebration. It would mark 1 year since alien arrogance had backfired so completely that it transformed the galaxy forever. The beings who had sanctioned their protectors would now gather to celebrate their guardians, grateful for the mercy that allowed their civilizations to survive. It was a fitting end to the greatest miscalculation in galactic history and the beginning of an age where humanity's true role was finally acknowledged by all who depended on their protection. The galaxy had learned a simple truth. In a universe full of civilizations, only one species had the wisdom and strength to keep them all alive.